GrowCFO is where finance leaders grow together. Join thousands of like-minded professionals using GrowCFO to access the combined knowledge and experience of the finance leader community. You can join us today, growcfo.net. Hello and welcome to the GrowCFO show. My name's Kevin Appleby, and today I've got with me an old friend of GrowCFO, Dan Stockdale. Now, Dan, you'll recognise probably from having been around in a number of webinars that we've done with Dan by himself and alongside Ollie Deacon, talking about automation, Power BI, and things like that. And Dan is also the author of the Automation Accelerator that we've been selling in GrowCFO for best part of the last year as major changes happened in the world of Power BI and what you could do using artificial intelligence. So, Dan, welcome to the GrowCFO show.
Hello. Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Dan, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, cool. So I'm Dan Stockdale, and I started out my career as a management accountant. This is back in 2007, and I studied SEMA. And when I qualified, I moved into kind of commercial analysis and got introduced to models or Excel models, commercial models or financial models, whatever you want to call them. And for most of my career, I've made that my specialism. So I've worked for a number of years as a financial modeler, both in industry, in a load of different industries, from kind of media to advertising to defense. I've done cinema, I've done women's fashion retail, I've done gyms, magazines, so lots of different industries. And now I work as a contractor doing financial modeling for London Business School. So actually modeling the organization itself, not teaching. And then also on the side, my side hustle is creating online courses for accounting and finance professionals in Microsoft tools, such as Power BI, Power Query, and Power Pivot, Python and Excel, and various sort of general kind of Excel courses. So yeah, that's what I do on a daily basis now.
So that's all self-based learning.
Yes. Yeah. So these are all video courses. So you can log in to your kind of what I call a study room, and you've got your course there, and you've got all the videos, you've got the downloadable materials, the slide decks, the demo files or exercise files and solutions, that kind of thing. And you can kind of learn at your own pace, which I think works well for some of these gap applications where sometimes you can learn a lot live, but sometimes you don't remember it all. But it's great if you can have that actual support, video support, to kind of remind yourself after the session.
Yeah, we've been running with you the Automation Accelerator for best part of 2024, and it was a really popular course.
Yeah.
So 2024, Dan, I think has really been the year of learning about this stuff. 2025 is probably the year of going to the next step and really implementing a lot of it.
Yes, I think with any of this kind of stuff, you certainly have to learn it first. Some of these tools can feel a bit overwhelming at first, and there can be a fair bit of complexity to it. So if you've just used Excel before, and then someone shows you Power BI, you're like, oh, how does this all work? And you've got to do some kind of comprehensive course, I think, really to understand how it works. And once you've done that, you need to start actually using it in your day-to-day job. It's the only way to get better at something like this, right? You can do all the learning, but you learn so much more when you actually start using it to solve your own problems in your business. And part of the reason we make some of these courses, so within Automation Accelerator, you've got Power BI, you've got Power Query and Power Pivot, you've got Python and Excel, and then we've got a bit on Copilot at the moment. These tools allow us to leverage lots and lots of data, big data, and data from many different sources. And organizations, as you'll know, are just collecting more and more data from different places, and that data is getting bigger and bigger. And as finance professionals, we've got an opportunity to actually leverage that. So once we've learned these tools, it's like, how can we actually implement them into our business to start actually like solving problems that are going to provide us value, creating reports that have insights, leveraging that big data from many sources. So I think if you've been learning Automation Accelerator in 2024, then yeah, as you say, 2025 is when you can actually put it to use in your organization, start driving value and making you really valued and indispensable to your business.
Yeah. So what sort of use cases are we talking about? When somebody finishes doing modules in Automation Accelerator, what are we suggesting the next steps are? What sort of things should they be looking at?
Yeah, so just for instance, one of the courses in Automation Accelerator is Power BI Bootcamp. And the idea behind that is how we can do our month-end reporting in Power BI. So how can we actually connect to data We connect data, we do some transformations which clean up the data, which is all automated. We build data models and DAX calculations and create reports. So the next steps is how can you actually do that with your organization? And it would be finding maybe at first some simple data sets that you can connect to and build a data model, and then actually start producing visualizations in a report that are helpful, actually add value in your monthly reporting, which actually save you time through the automation that you're programming into it. So I think that would be some of the use cases would be how can we create visualization reports that help us in their monthly reporting? I think it's the most relevant to your audience, accounting and finance professionals.
We're really talking about assisting financial storytelling.
Yeah, I think just in that example there of Power BI is great for storytelling. If you're someone who in the past has probably taken the typical approach to reporting, which is maybe you're just like me years ago, I would print out P&Ls and print out PEX reports and take them to the business and just talk through them. Probably a bit boring, a bit unengaging. I can't drill
I
into the
remember doing
numbers.
as a kid.
Yeah.
Exactly that. It is. You used to have to print them on a sheet of acetate because you couldn't project it to your PC screen into a conference room. No, you'd send the rest of the business team to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And I regularly used to do that, I think, back in the day. The great thing about something like Power BI now is that it's dynamic and interactive. So I can have that report open in a web browser in my meeting, or I can, for instance, embed my Power BI report into a PowerPoint deck. So I could be going through a bunch of PowerPoint slides, and then suddenly I have this report which I can actually start interacting with. So I can filter it. I can click parts of the donut charts or my sort of bar chart or whatever, and everything changes. And that allows me to tell a story. I can start drilling in, filtering things, and then progress with my story, explaining everything. And if people have questions, then I can often answer them in real time by drilling into my report as well. So you're right in saying it helps us tell a story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess another use case is not just telling the story in the room, but it's going into that whole FP&A analysis piece. You're probably automating a lot of the reports you create.
Yeah, the idea with this, and the kind of the same goes for really the Power Query and Power Pivot course, which is very similar to Power BI, but within Excel. And then Python and Excel is if you put the time into kind of learning it and actually creating the solution, it can ultimately then be pretty much automated in what it's doing, in that if there's new data updating at source, then that just gets fed into Excel or Power BI via Power Query. And then you've got your data models and your DAX calculations and your reports, such as visualizations in Power BI, or number focused reports, such as like P&Ls or sales dashboards or pivot tables in Excel. All that just instantly updates. And so any of this reporting that we're doing, we can just automate so much of it if we put the time into actually implementing solutions in our monthly work.
Yeah, which means that we can take the time to look at and interpret the data instead of crunching it in the first place.
Yeah. One of the great things about automation in general and kind of these solutions is that you have the flywheel of success, we call it, in that there's so much benefits to them. And one of the benefits is that we save time. We can actually plow that into making more and more reports. And as you say, rather than doing all this manual spade work, repetitive spade work each month of cleaning up data, things like that, we can automate drilling into those reports or understanding them to actually gain insights and deliver more value back to the business. And I think that's especially true when I talk about kind of these tools can be used to leverage big data from many different sources around an organization. They kind of give finance a lot of creativity and freedom to connect all that data and big data, millions of rows of data, and actually start thinking, how do I draw insight from this? You kind of program that into your calculations and into your reports. And then you can start actually delving down into those reports to creating that insight and really rich insight, which adds a lot of value to the business. So, yeah.
Yeah. Are you seeing very much happening then in the kind of ESG area where finance are increasingly being sucked into reporting stuff? And it's probably not the traditional finance data that they're having to report on.
Yeah, I'm not too involved with ESG in the roles that I do, but you're absolutely right. With something like Power BI, for instance, it's not just we don't have to just deal with financial data, deal with any types of data. In fact, I hear often, particularly marketing organizations love Power BI, and they're not necessarily telling a really finance focused story. But yeah, the great thing is you can use all different types of data. It doesn't have to just be financial, and you can get that from so many different sources. For instance, you can kind of scrape web pages for data using Power Query, which then can be delivered into Power BI. But yeah, all this data, it doesn't have to relate to finance, kind of any data. We can blend it in with financial data as well if we want.
Yeah. Now, I guess that a lot of the financial data that we're going to analyze and automate the reporting of is going to be historic, Dan. It's going to tell us what has happened rather than what's going to happen in the future. Are you seeing many use cases yet or are we far enough advanced yet with all of this automation to be starting to produce predictive analytics?
It's an interesting question. I think one of the interesting things here is not so much Power BI and Power Query, Power Pivot, although Power BI does have, I think, some kind of AI features in it, which could potentially look at some predictive analytics. But Excel's kind of latest innovation, which is rolling out now, is Python and Excel.
Yeah.
And there's a huge amount you can do with Python, including things like advanced analytics and machine learning and things like that. And with Python and Excel, you can connect to data in Excel, big data, via Power Query again. So I can connect my data from different sources. I can create a connection into Excel for that data, and then I can effectively connect that data using Python code. I can type Python code into Excel, and that will get mixed with my big data that I've connected to, and it'll get chucked up into Microsoft Cloud, processed, and then give me results. There will be ways to leverage that data using Python to create predictive analytics. And the great thing is you don't have to be this kind of Python coding guru to do that, because at the same time as Excel or Microsoft rolling out this Python and Excel, they're rolling out Copilot in Excel. So Copilot is AI built into Microsoft applications. And it might take some time, but you'll be able to say to Copilot, analyze this data and give me maybe some predictive analytics or whatever using Python. And the AI goes off and does that. So I think there's a very interesting opportunity in the near future or the medium term future for us to leverage that data and create really interesting insights about what might happen in the future based on the past using some of that technology.
Now, Python for Excel and Copilot are part of the automation accelerator we're talking about. Now, I know next to nothing about Python. Now, if I was coming along onto that particular part of the automation accelerator, what would I learn?
It's a good question. So, like I said at the start, we've got 4 courses in that accelerator. So we've got Power BI, Power Query, Power Pivot, Power Query, Power Pivot, one course. We've got Python and Excel, and we've got Copilot. I'll say now Copilot is being slowly rolled out in Excel by Microsoft. So that's going to keep on getting updated as we go along. With Python in Excel, the idea here is that it gives you a grounding in Python. You're not going to become an absolute genius in Python, and you probably don't necessarily want to be. But
whatsoever to write code, Dan. I reckon
yeah,
what everybody's telling me that this is the game changer in Excel. This is going to be so powerful.
yeah. And that's the thing. At the start of that course, I set out some manage expectations and effectively say, look, near future, you'll be able to use Copilot to leverage Python and actually create the code for you. And so that's why I'm saying you don't have to be a kind of a Python genius, in that the AI will effectively do that for you. But as we know, with AI, it doesn't always get things right. So the idea behind the Python course is to give you a really good grounding in the fundamentals of Python, and also how to actually be entering it into Excel and how it works, etc. So that when Copilot does give you Python code and it doesn't quite give you the right results, or there's an issue with it or it needs to be edited, you can have a general understanding of that Python and then edit it in the Copilot and get almost kind of like the correct result, or actually check if the AI is doing the right thing for you. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose that can be the danger, that the AI, in my experience so far, has been very good at inventing stuff. Is the risk that it creates some code that technically works but actually does the wrong thing?
Yeah, that is risk. And kind of as you say, and I've had this similar experience in, for instance, ChatGPT, it can tell me something in a very convincing way, which I've realized is incorrect. And then I've corrected it and it said, oh, yeah, I was wrong. And so there is that risk there, and that's a massive risk. And that's the idea really behind this Python course is, if you don't know anything about Python and you're just asking this kind of AI Copilot, use it? How do you know it's right? So we're at least trying to give people a grounding in interpreting the code that it comes back with to generally understand whether it's right. And if it's not, how to edit it so that it hopefully is. But yeah, that's a very real risk. And I know, having spoken to various sort of data people, they very much see that risk as well.
That's really interesting. And the way you should approach Python and Excel is not necessarily become a Python expert, but at the same time, not totally rely on the various AI tools that we've got to write the code. Now, have that understanding of how the code works. And I suppose it's not that different to any other programming language. That if you've done a little bit of a dabble, then things should quickly make sense.
Yeah, I think as a programming language, it's generally seen as one of the more intuitive ones. And if you have done programming before, then you're probably not going to have too hard a time learning it. But I think this is, some finance professionals will have used it, but I think the majority certainly won't. But what we try and do in the course is to keep it relatively simple and just say, look, this is generally how it works. These are the main things you need to understand about Python, and then actually go through some of the most fundamental use cases. And there's a lot to learn in there, and it'll be very new for people. But I don't think there's anything in there where it's like too crazy difficult. So I try to keep the audience in mind. I appreciate people don't want to become these sort of Python coding geniuses, because that just takes too much time and probably isn't the life decision people want to sign up for. But yeah, I think we strike a good level in that course.
Yeah. I remember when I was working in PwC, we had a department called Business Dynamics.
Yeah.
Well, all the financial modelers sat, or modelers in general sat. And there were a group of Excel folk in there who loved writing code in Visual Basic. Problem was something that Excel couldn't quite do. You went along to them, and they were so competitive with each other. Who could write the code fastest? Who could write the cleverest chart or whatever to solve whatever the problem was? Are we saying now that all of those skills in VBA are perhaps redundant and Python's going to replace that?
First off, I'll say I used to work in a modeling team at PwC, so it's probably similar to Business Dynamics. And that team was split into half modelers, half data scientists. So the data scientists would have been all over Python and R and lots of different programming languages. The modelers, some loved VBA or Visual Basic in Excel. I wasn't one of them, because I think with something like VBA in terms of modeling, VBA, even a simple like bit of code, adds a massive layer of complexity to a model, and often it isn't required. I think whether Python will replace it, not necessarily, in that I think VBA would generally be used to automate tasks in Excel itself, whereas Python will be used more to automate tasks in data analysis, running some code on data to clean it or produce some kind of insight into it or to visualize it. That's what the Python code is going to be doing, as opposed to the Python code being used to control what Excel itself is doing. So I don't think it will necessarily replace it, but that said, maybe it will. Yeah, I guess in some aspects it will. When some people do write VBA code to automate some types of tasks, maybe it's copying data from one place to another. That probably will stay with VBA, but some kind of maybe analysis tasks where you're repeating some kind of tasks to do with data maybe can be replaced. But yeah, I think it will just work differently. But yeah, sorry, I probably haven't given the clearest answer there, but I think in some of the use cases it will, but some not.
It's very difficult to go crystal ball gazing at this stage. Neither of us have got any idea what's around the corner.
Yeah.
And in fact, if we'd been having this conversation 2 years ago, would we have ever imagined what's just happened? The world has changed so much.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and it's interesting to see how it's developing. And I think two of the biggest things here, I think particularly with some of these Microsoft applications, is now being able to work with big data, and we've got Power Query to thank for that. That's been a game changer in terms of Power BI, because it's allowed Power BI to happen, but also Excel. It allows us to work with big data in Excel. But simultaneously, you've got AI coming along as well, which can start to actually really leverage that big data. So I think it is really difficult to understand or to predict correctly what's going to happen in the next couple of years, next 2 or 3 years, and how that's going to change our roles as well. But certainly, it's really good to be learning these tools, because I think that you can follow with the development, and you will be needing to use them eventually. And yeah, I think people's roles will change quite a lot in the future. Or at least that's what Ollie Deacon says. A lot of webinars with Ollie Deacon, who's another trainer, of course, with GrowCFO, and he's very much into visualizing the future. So if you want a man with a crystal ball, then it's
Probably
definitely
Ollie.
Ollie.
Yes, I've had that conversation with Ollie before as well. Now, I suppose to me, what's interesting in terms of the changing roles in finance, now, all of these things are happening that you're falling into very nicely as a financial modeler. Do you think that what will happen is that financial modeling will become more available to the generalist finance person? Or are we going to find that we've got deeper and deeper specialisms for financial modelers?
I think these tools that I've been talking about don't change financial modeling so much. And so financial modeling and thinking, creating these sort of complex spreadsheets with various formula, et cetera, et cetera. I think these tools change more data analysis and insights on data. They're not going to be used to recreate a financial model. I think that's probably here to stay for quite some time. I think when these tools start to change financial, I think it will be a case of I'll be saying to Copilot, create me a financial model on whatever, and it will just suddenly create one for you. I think that's probably years and years away because it's not uniform how you do this stuff. But yeah, I think these tools change more sort of data analysis and how we leverage data and how we automate the cleanup of data and things like that and actually find insights in that data. I think that's where they're really relevant. Whereas financial modeling is something, yeah, quite separate to that.
Yeah. So where do you see your courses going in the next year? It's going to be new. What are you going to add into them, Dan?
The thing which I'm certainly going to be looking at is Copilot.
Yeah.
So Copilot was released by Microsoft about just over a year ago. I think organizations who wanted to buy at least 500 licenses or something like that could start buying them from November 22. Then in November 23 rather, last year. From January this year, you could buy sort of single licenses. And Copilot is in lots of different Microsoft applications, Excel, Word, Outlook, PowerPoint, etc. But Excel is the one where it's almost the most behind. It's the most basic in terms of its functionality. So with the Copilot course, it was effectively, look, this is what it can do at the moment. And that was sort of created at the start of 24 or kind of February or March 24. Now that new functionality will be coming into that, there'll be an update on that. So I think Copilot can now be used with Python and Excel, I think for US customers. Presumably at some point that will be UK and the rest of the world. So once I have access to that, something I'll definitely be interested in updating that course with. This is how we can actually leverage these two sort of tools together. But my prediction or my expectation would be that it doesn't necessarily work great, or it's maybe a little bit basic. So I want to keep updating that course with new developments as they come along, and that's Copilot where that will be updated most.
Yeah. So Copilot will tell you how to write the Python for Excel. Can you go at the moment, say, to Claude or ChatGPT and get decent answers on how to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, you can go to ChatGPT, and I think you might have to have a paid license for Python code, but you can go to ChatGPT and basically tell it what you want it to do, and it will create Python code. You could then take that and copy and paste it effectively into the Python formula bar, which you'll be able to access if you have currently the latest version of Excel, which is the beta version, and you may then need to tweak it a bit. But yeah, you can get that Python code from other AI at the moment. But the idea with Copilot is that obviously that will create the Python code so you don't have to go anywhere else.
Yeah. I really am waiting for Microsoft Copilot to get good. And I must admit that I jumped in and it was available to buy as an add-on to the package that I had, bought it, and gotta say I was a little bit disappointed with the stuff
Yeah.
it came up with. And in places like Word, I thought it'd be great for helping to write articles and so on. I know I ended up reverting to other, actually unpaid forms of AI to do that decent writing stuff.
Yeah, it's certainly pretty underwhelming at the start. But I think that's probably the same for any of these things like ChatGPT, I think version 1 or whatever it was. I remember someone saying, yeah, you just use it to write poems or something like that. And then you look at where it is now, and I think it'll just be the same for Copilot. It's only really been out for about a year. So you need to give it time. And I think as people use it, I assume Microsoft are picking up lots of kind of user feedback, et cetera, and improving it all the time. But I'm sure eventually in a couple of years' time, you won't have to do any more work. You
I
can
think
just leave it to Copilot.
I got a great quote from Adam Shilton, where Adam said, well, AI is never going to be as bad as it is today.
Yes, well, hopefully not. Otherwise, something's going wrong. But yeah, and it's true. And that's the thing, as you say, it's very underwhelming at the moment, but you can just see so much potential for it in the future. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So, what does the future hold for Dan?
For me, we'll see. So yeah, I create these courses as my side hustle, and I do the contracting full time. And it would be nice to move to doing the courses full time and
Yeah.
no day job financial modeling. But we'll see. I think I would like to create more courses aimed at kind of accounting finance, but I think it will probably just stick to Microsoft apps in doing it.
It's a good niche to be in.
Yeah, what I like about the Microsoft apps is that every finance professional has access to them, whether they use them or not. If you've got an Office license, then you can use Power BI. If you use Excel, then you probably don't necessarily know it's there, but you can use Power Pivot. And so it's great to be creating courses which I then know any finance professional will see. Okay, this can help me in my day-to-day job if I just learn how to do it. And I've already got access to all this stuff. So yeah, so I'd like to continue in that space.
Yeah. So, Dan, thank you for taking us on a whirlwind trip through Power BI, Python, Copilot, and using those things in practice and all the stuff that we can do now that probably 12 months ago, we were just getting suddenly shocked by seeing, oh, this new technology is on the block. What are we going to do with it?
Yeah. Yeah, no problem at all. I think it's very exciting times, and what I'm particularly excited to look out for is that whole Python being rolled out to everyone, how they start using it, and then how really they start using it with Copilot. I think that'll be really interesting, and it will just give so much opportunity when it works well for really delving into data and drawing out really good insight and saving us time. So yeah, exciting times.
Exciting times indeed. Dan, thank you for being this week's guest on the GrowCFO show.
Thank you for having me.